The morning sky over Kazera burned red with smoke and fire. Killian pressed his 4 hands against the communication console, his pale blue skin trembling as explosions echoed across the capital city. Through the tower windows, he could see the dark shapes of enemy ships circling like predators above the peaceful gardens that had stood for 1,000 years. "The northern districts are gone," whispered Veltar from behind him. The council leader's voice shook with grief. 2 million souls just gone. Killian nodded, but kept working. His fingers moved quickly across the controls, adjusting frequencies and boosting signal strength. The Vallani had never needed powerful military communications before. Their peaceful society had always relied on gentle, short-range transmissions for daily life. Now he was trying to push their technology beyond its limits, sending a desperate message across the vast emptiness of space. "You certain this will work?" Veltar asked. "No," Killian replied honestly. "But what choice do we have?" The young communications officer was barely past his 2nd century, young for a Vallani. He had spent his life studying the beautiful art of interstellar communication, learning to craft messages that sang like poetry across the void. Now, he was composing what might be his people's final words. Another explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling as the Korthok bombardment continued. The insectoid invaders had appeared 3 weeks ago without warning or demands. They simply began destroying everything the Vallani had built. Cities, art galleries, schools, hospitals. Nothing was spared. "We tried to surrender," Veltar said quietly. "We offered them everything we had. They don't want our surrender. They want our extinction." Killian had heard this story many times now. The Vallani had no concept of warfare. When the first Korthok ships arrived, the Planetary Council had sent welcoming messages. They offered gifts, knowledge, even their most precious artworks. The response had been plasma fire raining down on their cities. "Signal strength at maximum," Killian reported, beginning wide-spectrum broadcast. He took a deep breath and activated the transmission. His voice would now travel across hundreds of light years, reaching every corner of known space. If anyone was listening, if anyone cared, they would hear Kasara's final plea. "This is Killian of the Vallani Union, broadcasting from Kasara Prime. We are under attack. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. We have no weapons, no armies, no way to defend ourselves. We are a peaceful people who have never harmed anyone." His voice caught as another explosion lit up the sky outside. A transport ship full of evacuating civilians had just been destroyed. Hundreds more dead. "We don't have much time." "The enemy ships are everywhere. They call themselves the Korthok Empire. They don't want our resources or our technology. They just want us dead. All of us." Veltar placed a gentle hand on Killian's shoulder. The old council leader's eyes were full of tears. He had lived for 8 centuries, watching his people grow and flourish in peace. Now he was watching them die. "Please," Killian continued, "if anyone receives this message, if anyone in the galaxy still believes that innocent lives matter, we need help. We are located in the Kepler 442 system, 3rd planet from the star. We have nothing to offer except our gratitude. We don't have armies to trade with you or treasures to give you. We are just people who want to live." The building shook again. Through the communication arrays, Killian could hear reports from across the planet. The southern continents were under full assault. The beautiful coral cities of the eastern archipelago were being systematically destroyed. Millions of Vallani were trapped with nowhere to run. Our scientists estimate we have perhaps 10 days before complete planetary destruction. Maybe less. The Korthok forces seemed to enjoy taking their time. They could have killed us all in the first day, but they preferred to watch us suffer. Killian paused, struggling to find the right words. How do you ask strangers to die for you? How do you make beings you've never met care about your survival? We know this message might reach no one. We know that most species in the galaxy have their own problems, their own wars to fight. But we have to try. We have children here, families, artists and teachers and dreamers who never hurt anyone. They deserve a chance to live. The communication array suddenly sparked and went dark. A Korthok strike had hit the power grid. The emergency batteries kicked in, but Killian knew they wouldn't last long. Signal strength dropping, he reported. Keep broadcasting, Veltar ordered. Use everything we have left. Killian rerouted power. From life support systems, from the building's lights, from anything non-essential. The transmission had to continue. It was their only hope. This is our final broadcast. To anyone listening, please remember us. Remember that we tried to live in peace. Remember that we reached out to the stars, not with weapons, but with hope. If you can help us, we are here. If you cannot, then please just remember that we existed. Fra. Across the galaxy, the message traveled through the vast emptiness between stars. It passed by dead worlds and thriving civilizations, through asteroid fields and nebulae, carried by the patient speed of light toward destinations unknown. Most species that received it would ignore the plea. They had their own problems, their own territories to defend. The galaxy was a cruel place where the weak died and the strong survived. One more extinct species would barely be noticed, but the message eventually reached a small blue planet on the edge of a spiral arm, where a species called humans had built their first interstellar civilization. When the transmission arrived at Terra Command, it was just another routine communication among thousands received daily. The duty officer who first heard Killian's desperate words was a young lieutenant named So-Young. She had been monitoring deep space communications for 3 years, listening to the chatter of trade ships and diplomatic messages. She had never heard anything like this before. Within minutes, the message was on Admiral Taeyeon's desk. Within an hour, it had reached the highest levels of human government. And within 6 hours, something unprecedented began to happen. The Third Human Expeditionary Fleet, all 67 ships, received orders to prepare for immediate departure. 30,000 Marines began loading equipment and supplies. The massive battleship Souls might powered up its engines for the first time in 2 years, back on Kazara. Killian and Veltar didn't know that their message had been received. They sat in the darkening communication center, watching their world burn, believing they would die alone and forgotten. They had no way of knowing that help was coming. Not the small rescue ship they had hoped for, but an entire fleet of warships from a species that had never learned to ignore a cry for help. Humans were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. Commander G1 stood on the bridge of the Soul's Might, watching the Vellani system grow larger on the main display. Behind her, 66 other human warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls dark against the stars. She had been preparing for this moment during the entire 5-day journey from Earth. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures, reported Lieutenant Doyen from his station. The Korthok fleet is bigger than we estimated. At least 200 ships. Any response from the Vellani? Juan asked. Weak signals from the planet's surface. They're still alive down there, but barely. Korthok are taking their time with the bombardment. Captain Minho moved to stand beside. Quan, the veteran officer, had fought in the Titan Wars and knew the look of a dying world. Permission to speak freely, Commander. Always. The Vellani have no idea what's coming. They sent out a plea for help, maybe expecting a single ship with medical supplies. They're about to get the full Third Fleet. Juan nodded. She had been thinking the same thing during the journey. The Vellani were a completely peaceful species, according to the intelligence reports. They had no military, no weapons, no concept of warfare. They were about to witness the arrival of humanity's most powerful fleet. "Open a channel to the Villani planet," she ordered. The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, Commander. Broadcasting on all frequencies." Jawan took a deep breath. First contact with a new species was always delicate, but this situation was unlike anything in the textbooks. "This is Commander G1 of the Terran 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help." A response came quickly, filled with static and background noise. The voice was clearly alien, but the translation software worked perfectly. "Terran ships, this is Veltar of the Villani Council. We did not expect so many vessels. Are you a military force?" "We are the human response to your SOS," G1 replied simply. "We don't do things by half measures." There was a long pause. G1 could imagine the confusion and fear the Villani must be feeling. Throughout galactic history, large military fleets meant conquest, not rescue. Commander Veltar's voice came back. "We are grateful for your response, but we must ask, what do you want in return for your help?" The question hung in the air of the bridge. Every human officer present knew the answer, but they also knew how impossible it would sound to alien ears. "We want nothing," Juwan said clearly. "You called for help. We came to help." Another long pause, then Veltar's voice returned, even more confused. "Nothing. But what your fleet must have cost enormous resources to send here. Your soldiers are risking their lives for strangers. There must be something you want." Captain Minho stepped forward. "Commander, request permission." To explain, G1 nodded and handed him the communicator. "Veltar, this is Captain Minho. I'll make this simple. On our world, when someone calls for help, you help them. That's how we were raised. That's who we are. Put the size of your response, ... double quotes." Veltar's voice trailed off. "The size of our response matches the size of the threat," Minho replied. "We don't send a fishing boat to fight a hurricane." In the background of the Villani transmission, they could hear other voices speaking rapidly in the alien language. Dr. Yunji, the fleet's chief medical officer, was monitoring the conversation from her station. Her screens showed biological readings from the Villani communications. "Commander," she reported quietly, "the Villani are showing extreme stress responses. Their heart rates are through the roof. They're terrified of us or the Korthok." G1 asked. "Both, I think. They've never seen a military fleet before. They don't understand what we're capable of." Lieutenant Soyang, the diplomatic liaison, moved to Juwan's side. "Permission to try a different approach." "Go ahead." Soyang took the communicator. "Veltar, my name is Soyang. I'm here to help coordinate between our species. Can you tell us about your people? We want to understand who we're protecting." The change in approach seemed to help. Veltaret's voice became calmer. "We are ... We are artists mostly, scientists, philosophers, gardeners. We have lived in peace for 3,000 years. We have never fought a war. We don't even have words for many of the concepts you must be familiar with." "What about the Korthok?" Soyang asked gently. "When did they arrive?" 3 weeks ago. They appeared without warning and began destroying our cities. We tried to communicate, to offer them anything they wanted. They ignored us completely. They just ... They just want us dead." Dr. Yunji was studying the sensor readings from the planet. "Below, Commander, I'm picking up massive civilian casualties. The Korthok aren't just conquering, they're systematically exterminating the population." G1 felt a cold anger settle in her chest. This wasn't warfare, it was genocide. "Veltar, we need tactical information. How many Korthok ships are in your system?" "Our sensors show approximately 200 vessels. They're concentrated around our major cities." "Commander, I must ask again. Are you certain you can help us?" They have been here for 3 weeks. They know this system better than you do, Chikepta. Minho smiled grimly. Viltar, let me explain something about humans. We come from what you might call a death world. Okay. We evolved as persistence hunters. Okay. We don't give up, we don't retreat, and we definitely don't abandon people who need help. But there are only 67 of your ships, Viltar protested. That's more than enough, Ji-Wan said confidently. Lieutenant Doyan, what's the status of the Korthok fleet? They're spread out across the system, Commander. Looks like they're enjoying themselves. Okay. Their formations are sloppy, and they're not maintaining proper defensive positions. They're not expecting a fight, observed Captain Minho. I think they're dealing with another peaceful species. On the planet below, Velanara, a Velani scientist, was frantically analyzing the human transmissions. The energy signatures from the human ships were unlike anything in her database. These vessels were clearly built for war, but the power readings were incredible. Okay. Veltar, she called to the council leader. The human ships are generating energy, levels that match our entire planetary grid. Each one of them could power our capital city. Veltar relayed this information to the humans. Commander Juan, our scientists are impressed by your technology. But we must warn you, the Korthok ships are much larger than yours. Their weapons have been destroying our cities for weeks. Size isn't everything, Jawan replied. We need to get our people down to your planet to coordinate evacuation efforts. Can you provide safe landing zones? Evacuation? Viltar sounded confused. Commander, there are 8 billion Velani on this planet. We cannot simply leave our homeworld. Dr. Yunchi spoke up. Commander, they're right. Full evacuation would be impossible with our current resources. We need months to move that many people. Then we don't evacuate, Juwan said simply. We make the planet safe. The bridge fell silent. Every human officer understood what that meant. They weren't here to rescue refugees. They were here to eliminate a threat. Belta, Juwan continued. We're going to need you to trust us. We're going to do things that might seem strange to your people. We're going to be loud, violent, and very thorough. But when we're done, your planet will be safe. I don't understand, Velta replied. You don't need to understand, Captain Minho said. You just need to stay out of our way and keep your people safe. We'll handle the rest. As the human fleet moved deeper into the Velani system, Korthok sensors began detecting the new arrivals. On the bridge of the Korthok flagship, War Commander Takmar studied the readings with amusement. 67 small ships, he clicked to his subordinates. Another weak species coming to die with their friends. This day grows more entertaining. He had no way of knowing that he was looking at the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. The Korthok had spent 3 weeks terrorizing a peaceful species. Now, they were about to learn what happened when humans decided someone needed to be stopped. The first engagement would begin in less than 6 hours, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first shot of the war came at 0800 hours, ship time. The Korthok patrol cruiser designated target. Alpha was conducting a routine sweep of the outer system when it detected the human destroyer, Business Pride, moving through the asteroid. Afield. War Commander Takmar had been right about one thing. The human ship was much smaller than his vessel. The Korthok cruiser was 3 times longer and carried twice as many weapons, by every standard measurement. It should have been an easy victory. The engagement lasted exactly 47 seconds. Captain Hunjin watched from the bridge of the Business Pride as the Korthok ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The alien vessel had opened fire first, as expected. The humans had responded with a coordinated barrage of plasma torpedoes and railgun fire that overwhelmed the enemy shields in the first 5 seconds of combat. Target destroyed, reported the weapons officer. No survivors detected. Signal the fleet, Yonjin ordered. First contact complete, Korthok. Response time and weapons capability confirmed. 300 kilometers away, hidden in the shadow of a large asteroid, Velmos was watching through his ship's sensors. The elderly Villani had volunteered to serve as an observer, documenting the human military response for his people. He had just witnessed left him speechless. The Korthog ship that had been terrorizing Villani colonies for weeks had been destroyed. So quickly that he barely had time to record the event. The human destroyer had moved with deadly precision, targeting the exact weak points in the enemy's defenses. Vilmos transmitted his report back to Kasara. Council members, the humans have engaged the enemy. For one Korthog cruiser destroyed in less than 1 minute. The human vessel took no damage. On the planet below, Veltar and the other council members struggled to understand what they were hearing. The Korthog ships had seemed invincible to them, raining death from the sky with complete impunity. Now they were learning that the humans considered them easy targets. How is this possible? Asked Velinar, the scientist who had been studying human technology. The Korthog ship was much larger. Size doesn't matter in space combat, explained Lieutenant Soyang through the communication link. Our ships are built for speed, accuracy, and overwhelming firepower. We don't build them to look impressive, we build them to win. Admiral Tian's voice came over the fleet-wide channel from his flagship. All units, this is Admiral Tian. Rules of engagement are now in effect. Korthog have fired first. We are authorized to use any means necessary to eliminate the threat to the Villani people. On the bridge of the Soul's Might, Commander Jiwan was studying tactical displays showing the positions of all Korthog forces in the system. The enemy fleet was spread out over 8 different locations, with the largest concentration orbiting Kazara itself. They're not expecting coordinated resistance, observed Captain Minho. Look at these formations. They're positioned for bombardment, not fleet combat. Dr. Yunji looked up from her medical station. Commander, I'm detecting massive civilian casualties on the planet's surface. The Korthog bombardment is targeting hospitals, schools, residential areas. This isn't military action. It's pure extermination. Juan felt the familiar cold anger that had served her well in previous conflicts. Admiral, request permission to engage all targets simultaneously. Permission granted, came to Yan's immediate response. All fleet units, execute Plan Delta. Eliminate all Korthog forces in this system. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human fleet split into 7 attack groups, each targeting a different concentration of enemy ships. They moved with surgical precision, using the system's asteroid fields and gas clouds as cover. The Korthog forces had no time to react. They had been expecting to face another peaceful species, perhaps with a few defensive ships. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had been perfecting the art of space warfare for over a century. The battle group, led by Captain Sun Wu, engaged the Korthog forces near the third moon. 12 enemy ships were destroyed in the first wave of attacks. The remaining Korthog vessels tried to retreat, but the human ships pursued them relentlessly. This is how humans fight, Sun Wu explained to his crew as they hunted down the fleeing enemies. We don't accept surrender from genocidal monsters. We eliminate the threat completely. Near Kasara's orbital defense platforms, Major Jinwu led his squadron against the largest Korthog formation. The enemy had 43 ships positioned to continue the planetary bombardment. The humans had 12. The mathematics didn't matter. The humans attacked with such coordinated precision that the Korthog commanders couldn't respond effectively. Their ships were designed for bombarding defenseless planets. It's not fighting an enemy that shot back with deadly accuracy. Velmos continued to observe from his hidden position, documenting everything. The human ships moved like a pack of predators. He realized he didn't just fight individually. They fought as a single organism, each ship supporting the others in perfect coordination. Council members, he transmitted. The humans fight unlike any species I have ever studied. They are not just defending us, they are hunting the Korthok forces across the entire system. I count over 60 enemy ships destroyed in the first hour of combat. On Khazara, the Vellani people were experiencing something they had never felt before. Hope. The bombardment of their cities had stopped. The Korthok ships that had been raining death from above were silent. Young Valkith, an artist who had been documenting the destruction of her city, now watched human fighters streak across the sky. They were hunting down the remaining Korthok ground forces with the same deadly efficiency their ships had shown in space. The humans are not just soldiers, she whispered to herself as she watched a human dropship land near her shelter. They are something else entirely. Sergeant Heinwu stepped out of the dropship with his squad, immediately establishing a defensive perimeter. They had been briefed on Vellani, physiology, and psychology, a completely peaceful species that had never known warfare. Civilians in the area, he called out in the Vellani language, using the translation device. We are here to help. Please identify yourselves. Valkith emerged from her hiding place, her 4 arms raised in the Vellani gesture of peace. I am Valkith, artist of the 3rd District. Are you truly here to help us? Hien Wu's expression softened as he looked at the young alien. She was clearly terrified, but also desperately hopeful. Yes, we're here to help. Are there other civilians in this area? Hundreds, Valkith replied. Okay. They're hiding in the underground shelters. The Korthok have been hunting them for sport. The sergeant's jaw tightened. Not anymore. Medek, Nari, establish a triage station. Corporal Wu Jin set up a perimeter. We're going to make this area safe. As the human marines spread out to secure the area, Valkith followed them with her recording device. She had spent her life creating art that celebrated peace and beauty. Now she was witnessing something that challenged everything she thought. She knew about the universe. These humans were killers. She could see it in their movements, their weapons, their cold efficiency. But they were also protectors. They had traveled across the galaxy to fight for people they had never met, asking nothing in return. Sergeant, she asked carefully, why are you doing this? Why did your people come so far to help us? Hyun Woo paused in his work of setting up defensive positions. Because you needed help, and we were able to give it. That's what civilized people do. The answer was so simple that it took Valkith's breath away. In a galaxy where every species looked out for themselves first, the humans had come to fight for strangers because it was the right thing to do. Above them, the space battle continued. Korthok fleet was being systematically destroyed, but the human ships took no joy in the killing. They were simply solving a problem, the problem of a species that thought it could commit genocide without consequences. By the end of the day, the Korthok invasion force would be completely eliminated. But the real victory was happening on the ground, where human soldiers were pulling Vellani civilians from the rubble and promising them that they were safe now. The galaxy was about to learn. What happened when you attacked a species under human protection? The lesson would be written in the wreckage of 200 alien warships. The Korthok war commander Takmar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. In 6 hours, his invasion fleet had been reduced from 200 ships to fewer than 30. The small human vessels had torn through his forces like they were made of paper. How many ships have we lost? He demanded of his communications officer. 173 confirmed, destroyed, war commander. The humans are hunting down our remaining forces across the system. Takmar's compound eyes glowed with rage. This is impossible. We have fought dozens of species, Kanga, entire star systems. How can these tiny ships be defeating us? On the planet below, Colonel Junho was leading the largest ground operation in human military history. 5,000 Marines had landed across Kasara's surface, not to conquer territory, but to protect every single Vellani civilian they could find. Bravo Company, report. Kunho spoke into his communicator as his unit moved through the ruins of what had been a beautiful garden city. Sir, we've secured the hospital district. 200 Villani civilians extracted from the rubble. Team is treating the wounded. Charlie Company. School district secured. Colonel. We found 300 children hiding in the basement. They're scared but alive. Junho nodded grimly. The Korthok ground forces had been systematically hunting civilians for weeks. But now the hunters had become the hunted. Human Marines were tracking down every Korthok soldier on the planet with deadly precision. Specialist Nari knelt beside a wounded Villani child, carefully applying the advanced human medical gel to the alien's injuries. The little one had 4 arms like all Villani, but 2 had been badly burned in a Korthok attack. It's okay, Nari said softly, using the translation device. You're safe now. The bad ones can't hurt you anymore. The child looked up at her with large, frightened eyes. Are you an angel? Nari smiled, despite herself. No, I'm just a human. But we're here to help. Keth continued to follow the human soldiers, documenting everything with her recording device. She had expected warriors to be cruel and violent, like the Korthok. Instead, she watched Sergeant Hyan Wu's squad risk their lives to save Villani civilians from a collapsed building. There, called Corporal Wu Jin, pointing to movement in the rubble. Think someone's trapped under there. The Marines immediately began moving heavy chunks of concrete and metal, working with careful precision to avoid causing further collapse. When they finally reached the trapped Villani family, Hyun-woo was the first to crawl into the dangerous space to pull them out. Why do you risk yourself for us? Asked the Villani father as Hyun-woo carried his injured daughter to safety. Because that's what we do, Hyun-woo replied simply. Falketh recorded the entire rescue, amazed by what she was seeing. These humans had traveled across the galaxy, risked their lives in space battles, and were now crawling into unstable ruins to save people they had never met. It made no logical sense, yet here they were. Dr. Yunji had established a field hospital in the capital city's main square. Her medical team was working alongside Villani doctors, sharing human medical technology while learning about Villani healing techniques. The human medicines work faster than ours, explained Dr. Velsera, a Villani physician who had been treating wounded civilians for weeks. But your healing methods are more gentle. Perhaps we can combine both approaches. That's exactly what I was thinking, Yunji agreed, injecting a human healing accelerator into a wounded Villani. Your people have incredible natural healing abilities. With our technology enhancing it, we can save lives that would have been lost. Above them, the space battle was reaching its conclusion. The remaining Korthok ships had gathered into a desperate defensive formation around their command vessel. War Commander Tokmer was making his final stand. All human ships, this is Admiral Taiyun, came to voice over the fleet communications. The enemy is cornered. Show them the same mercy they showed the Villani people. Commander Jiwan understood perfectly. The Korthok had shown no mercy to civilians, no restraint in their destruction. They would receive the same consideration in return. All weapons, target the command ship, she ordered. End this. The Soul's Might and 12 other human vessels opened fire simultaneously. The massive Korthok flagship, which had seemed so invincible to the Villani, was destroyed in a single coordinated barrage. Velmos, still observing from his hidden position, transmitted the moment to the planet below. The Korthok command ship is destroyed. The invasion fleet is completely eliminated. On Kasara's surface, the news spread quickly. Villani civilians who had been hiding for weeks began to emerge from their shelters. The nightmare was over, but for Colonel Junho and his Marines, the work was just beginning. The Korthok had left behind thousands of ground troops scattered across the planet. These soldiers were now cut off from their fleet, but they were still dangerous. Listen up, Junho addressed his battalion commanders. The Korthok ground forces are trapped on this planet. They've been hunting civilians for sport. Now, we're going to hunt them. The human Marines spread out across Khazara like a net, systematically, tracking down every Korthok soldier. The aliens had spent weeks learning the planet's geography while terrorizing the population. Now that knowledge would be used against them. Sergeant Hyun Woo's squad was moving through a forest where Korthok troops had been spotted. The aliens had been using the area as a base for raids on nearby Villani settlements. Movement 200 meters ahead, whispered Corporal Wu Jin. Hyun Woo raised his hand, signaling the squad to halt. Through his scope, he could see 3 Korthok soldiers advancing toward a group of Villani refugees who were trying to reach the human safe zone. They're stalking civilians, he reported quietly. Take them down. The engagement was over in seconds. The Korthok soldiers had no chance against trained human Marines who were fighting to protect innocent lives. This scene played out hundreds of times across the planet as human forces eliminated the remaining invaders. Valkith found herself in the forest, following another human patrol. She watched as they methodically cleared the area of Korthok forces while treating every Villani civilian they found with incredible gentleness. You fight like predators, she said to Sergeant Hyun-woo during a break in the action. But you protect like parents? Hyun-woo looked at the young Villani artist. We know the difference between enemies and innocents. The Korthok are enemies. Your people are innocent. It's that simple. But how do you switch so quickly? Wait. One moment, you are killing. The next, you are healing. Because both are necessary, Hyun-woo explained. We kill those who would hurt the innocent, and we heal those who have been hurt. That's what strength is for. As the day progressed, reports came in from across the planet. Korthok ground forces eliminated, civilian casualties minimized, safe zones established. The human military machine had accomplished in one day what the Villani had thought impossible: complete liberation of their homeworld. Dr. Yunji's field hospital was now treating both wounded Villani and injured human soldiers. The casualties among the Marines had been remarkably light, but every wounded human was receiving the same careful attention as the alien civilians. Doctor, called Specialist Nari. This Marine took shrapnel protecting a Villani family. He refused treatment until the civilians were stabilized. Yunji looked at the wounded soldier with respect. That's typical. Our people don't consider themselves more important than those they're protecting. As night fell over Khazara, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in weeks, Villani children were sleeping safely in their homes. Human Marines stood guard at every settlement, ensuring that no threat could approach. Colonel Jun-ho surveyed the tactical reports with satisfaction. All major population centers secured. Korthok ground forces 97% eliminated. Civilian evacuation no longer necessary. Skur asked one of his officers. What about the remaining Korthok soldiers? We'll find them, Jun-ho replied with certainty. Every last one. This planet is under human protection now. In space, the human fleet maintained patrol patterns around Khazara. Any ship approaching the system would find 67 human warships, ready to defend the Villani people. War Commander Takmar was dead, his fleet destroyed, his army scattered and hunted. The Korthok Empire had learned a lesson that would spread across the galaxy. Attacking innocent people had consequences when humans were watching. The tide had not just turned. It had become a tsunami that swept away an entire invasion force. The humans were just getting started. 3 days after the last Korthok soldier was eliminated, Ambassador Hanil arrived at Khazara aboard the diplomatic vessel New Seoul. Behind her came the second human fleet. But this time the ships carried engineers, doctors, and teachers instead of Marines. Commander G1 stood in the rebuilt Villani council chambers, looking out at the faces of the alien leaders who had survived the invasion. Veltar sat at the center of the group, his pale blue skin still showing the stress of the past weeks. The threat is eliminated, G1 reported formally. All Korthok forces in this system have been destroyed. Your planet is secure. Tar nodded slowly. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid, Commander. You saved our entire species. You owe us nothing, G1 replied. It's causing murmurs of confusion among the Vellani council members. Ambassador Haniel stepped forward, diplomatic training evident in her calm demeanor. Council leader Veltar, I am Ambassador Haniel of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I'm here to discuss the future relationship between our peoples. What kind of relationship? Asked Velanar, the scientist who had been studying human technology. We have seen your military power. Are we to become your subjects? No, Haniel said firmly. We're offering you something that has never existed in this galaxy before. A mutual defense pact with no strings attached. The Vellani Council exchanged glances. In their thousands of years of galactic study, they had never heard of such an arrangement. Military protection always came with a price. I don't understand, Veltar said, carefully. What do you want from us in return? Admiral Tayan, who had remained silent until now, stood up. We want you to continue being exactly what you are. Artists, scientists, philosophers, gardeners. The galaxy needs people like you. Dr. Yunji had been working with Vellani medical teams for 3 days, sharing human healing technology while learning about Vellani biological sciences. Your people have developed medical techniques that could save millions of human lives, she explained to the council. But we're not demanding them. We're asking if you'd like to share knowledge freely as partners. Velkith, the young artist who had documented the human rescue, spoke up from the gallery. Council members, I have recorded everything these humans have done. They fought not for conquest, but for protection. They risked their lives, not for profit, but for principle. The child speaks wisdom, said Velmos, the elder who had observed the space battles. I have seen their ships in action. They could have demanded anything from us. Instead, they asked for nothing. Ambassador Hanyul activated a holographic display showing star charts of the local galactic region. We're not here to build an empire. We're here to build something better. A network of species that protect each other, share knowledge freely, and work together to make the galaxy safer for everyone. But why? Asked Velanara. Your species has incredible military power. You could take whatever you wanted. Because that's not who we are, said Colonel Junho, who had been invited to represent the ground forces. On our world, we learned long ago that true strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The council chamber fell silent as the Vellani absorbed this concept. Their peaceful nature made it difficult for them to understand military thinking, but they could sense the sincerity in the human words. What would this alliance mean in practical terms? Velter asked. Admiral Tayan smiled. It means that if anyone threatens you again, they'll have to deal with us. It means we'll share our defensive technologies with you. It means we'll work together to explore the galaxy and make contact with other peaceful species. And what do we give you? Your friendship, Haniel replied simply. Your knowledge? Your perspective on the universe. You see beauty where we see tactical advantages. You create art where we see resources. The galaxy needs both viewpoints. Young Velkith stood up in the gallery. Council members, may I speak? Veltar nodded. You have earned the right to be heard, child. I have watched these humans for 3 days. I have seen their soldiers sing lullabies to our children. I have seen their doctors work 20-hour shifts to save our wounded. I have seen their engineers rebuild our cities without being asked. They are not conquerors. They are guardians. Dr. Yunji looked up from her medical reports. The Vellani have natural healing abilities that could revolutionize medicine across dozens of species. But more than that, they have something we humans sometimes lose sight of: the ability to see beauty in everything. We could learn from each other, suggested Velanara, your technology with our scientific methods, your strength with our wisdom. Sergeant Heinwu, who had been standing quietly in the back of the chamber, stepped forward. If I may speak, Council members. Veltar nodded. 3 days ago, a Vellani child asked me if I was an angel. I told her I was just a human. But maybe that's enough. Maybe being human means being willing to fight for strangers, to protect the innocent, to stand up against bullies, no matter how big they are. The council chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then Veltar stood up slowly. Ambassador Haniel, the Vellani Council accepts your offer of alliance. Not because we feel obligated, but because we believe your people represent something new in the galaxy, something better. The formal signing ceremony took place the next day in the rebuilt Capitol Square. Representatives from both species worked together to create a document that would become known as the Terran-Vellani Cooperation Accord. But even as the ceremony was taking place, something more important was happening across the galaxy. The news of humanity's response to the Vellani stress call was spreading through interstellar communication networks on peaceful worlds throughout the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of stronger neighbors began to take notice. The humans had proven that it was possible to respond to a call for help with overwhelming force applied for purely protective purposes. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Might, monitoring long-range communications. Commander, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy. Peaceful species asking if the reports about our intervention here are true. And some of them are asking if we would consider extending protection to them as well, Commander. Jiwan smiled. This was exactly what Admiral Taeyan had hoped would happen. Signaled Terra Command, informed them that we may need to expand the protection program. On the planet below, Velkith was creating her masterpiece, a holographic art installation that told the story of the human rescue. It's called it When Angels Wore Armor, and it would be displayed in galleries across the galaxy. The installation showed the progression from despair to hope, from destruction to renewal. But the most powerful element was the final scene. Human soldiers and Vellani civilians working together to rebuild their world. Side by side, Dr. Yunji was preparing to return to Earth with detailed information about Vellani medical techniques. But she was also leaving behind a team of human doctors who would work permanently alongside their Vellani colleagues. This is just the beginning, she told Velsera, her Vellani counterpart. Imagine what we could accomplish if we had a dozen species sharing medical knowledge freely. Colonel Junho's Marines were establishing permanent defense positions around Kazara, but they were also training alongside Vellani engineers to build better civilian shelters and evacuation systems. We're not just protecting you, he explained to the Vellani workers. We're making sure you can protect yourselves if we're ever not here in time. As the human ships prepared to resume their patrol duties, Velter sent one final message that would be remembered across the galaxy. To all species who may hear this transmission, we are the Vellani of Kazara. We sent out a call for help to the universe, expecting nothing. We received something far greater than aid. We received hope. The humans came not as conquerors, but as guardians. They asked for nothing and gave everything. If you are listening, if you are threatened, if you're afraid, know that there are those who will answer your call. The message spread across thousands of worlds, reaching species that had never heard of humans before. For the first time in galactic history, the strong had protected the weak without demanding payment. The age of human protection had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.